and happy anniversary. I bring you greetings from Episcopalians across this church, from Episcopalians in Taiwan and Micronesia, in Honduras, Ecuador, Colombia, Venezuela, Haiti, the Dominican Republic, the British and U.S. Virgin Islands, Puerto Rico, Austria, Belgium, France, Germany, Italy, Switzerland, and the rest of the United States. They pray for you, they celebrate with you this day, and I would ask your prayers for them. A couple of weeks ago, I watched an inattentive taxi driver hit a bicyclist in the bike lane as I was running down the sidewalk about a block away. The bicyclist got up. He was scraped, but he didn't seem to be terribly badly injured. I hung around until the cops and the EMTs came to check him out. But it's led me to think about the dangers that all of us meet in our daily living. Going to work, going for a stroll, going out to run errands. I've had more than a couple of interesting experiences while I've been out running early in the morning over the years. I've tripped and fallen several times. I've run into a post. I've been grabbed by a mentally ill person. And I've seen plenty of other people in trouble. I've heard kids waiting for the school doors to open scream and yell and abuse each other, not unlike the ways in which we saw in the YouTube video this week, the kids abusing their school bus monitor. I see people sleeping on park benches and on the ground all the time. I've also seen some pretty amazing sunsets and new fallen snow and lightning and thunder and drenching rain. In spite of the hazards in life, most of us still keep on going out there. Sometimes the challenges are a lot harder. I have a young friend whose beloved uncle just died, a man who'd been very important in the lives of all of his nieces and nephews. This is the third or fourth close relative that she has lost in the last few months, along with several other friends, some of them quite young, and a couple who've committed suicide. Her losses are painful and hard because she has been so close to all of these different people. The only way to avoid that kind of suffering is to distance yourself, and that brings with it its own kind of pain. We can stay engaged in life, or we can get so fearful that we run home and bury our heads under the covers. Most of us are afraid of something, at least some of the time. We quake in our boots at the thought of speaking up about injustice, or confronting an abusive coworker, or challenging somebody who tells a racist joke. Many people are fearful about the economy right now. Many people are worried about their health or their children. Our kids are afraid of the bullies at school, or not fitting in, or how they're going to deal with all of the demands that we lay on them. The society around us seems to be particularly vulnerable right now. It's proving very easy for politicians and media personalities to generate fear, to stir it up, especially at a time when many Americans are afraid of strangers, particularly the people in their own neighborhoods. Fear is preventing Congress from working together. Fear is driving all of the vitriol about immigration. And fear keeps many Americans from discovering that Muslims share most of the same values as Jews and Christians. Fear is also keeping us as a people from facing the ultimate emptiness of systems that are built on ever-increasing consumption. What kind of fear do you wrestle with? Both of the stories we heard this morning are about dealing with fear. David has a clear sense of his own capacity. It's King Saul who's a little more worried about his vulnerability. David reminds him that he's dealt with lions and bears, and that this giant of a man called Goliath shouldn't be any more intimidating. But Saul is worried, and he pushes David to put on the king's own armor. David does, and he tries to walk around, and he discovers how unfamiliar and how unwieldy all of it is. And he makes the decision to meet Goliath just as he is, without all of this extra stuff. He knows his own strength, the gifts that God has given him, and he makes the decision to meet Goliath as he is. He encounters a highly insulting opponent, but David doesn't seem to be afraid of the words or the curses. Goliath comes up and says something like, "Hubba hubba, come on, I'm going to feed you to the birds." And David responds by saying, "I can see all of your weapon systems. I simply come in the name of God, and God's justice will prevail." Jesus' friends are trying to get to the other side of the lake, but in the middle of that dark and stormy night, they're wrestling with their own storm of fear. Jesus is asleep, at rest on the bosom of the deep. His friends are terrified, and they wake him up and accuse him of not caring about mortal danger. And what does Jesus do? He invokes peace, even to the natural world that's terrifying his friends. Jesus' usual way of operating is about bringing peace, even if there is a whole load of fear and suffering on the way to it. His goal and his destination is a world of peace. Even in the story of David and Goliath, that is the aim, to find peace by getting past the bully's ability to intimidate, threaten, and dominate. You have an example in your own history with the famous or infamous Grace Sherwood. Her accusation and trial and dunking as a witch was an attempt on the part of this community to make life more peaceful by piling their load of fault and anxiety on one person. A person who seems to have had quite an ability to use her own resources to resist. She sued several different people for calling her a witch, and she won those suits. When somebody finally did manage to get a judgment against her, she seems to have had enough standing in this community to avoid death. And she obviously did not stay in jail forever. There were at least some people in this community who could see the image of God in her. And eventually, God's peace prevailed. The things and the people that we are most afraid of are seldom worth the effort. God has given us resources in abundance to respond to the fears that consume us. There's something very pointed in the beginning of the gospel story. When Jesus says, "Let's go across the lake," it says that he leaves with his friends just as he was. Like David, he does not put on somebody else's armor. He goes with what he is. Like his charge to the folks that he sends out 2 by 2, he travels light. He has all he needs. Today we might say that he had all his wits about him and peace in his heart. His ability to sleep through the storm was not a matter of avoiding reality. It was because of his knowledge of his belovedness in the eyes of God and his trust that he and his friends would be given what they needed to respond. David does something similar. When Saul questions David's capacity, saying, "You're just a boy. This guy's been in the ring for years," David responds by talking about the lions and the bears that he's been dealing with for a long time. Maybe you can hear the echo from The Wizard of Oz. That is where it comes from. Dorothy and the Tin Man and the Scarecrow deal with their fear in the forest by chanting, "Lions and tigers and bears, oh my." They believe that together they will be able to deal with whatever comes. We can survive the storm in the night. We can engage the bullies and the tyrants and the deceivers. We can do that when we remember that we are well loved, and that whatever happens, the Creator and the source of new life is already at work, helping to create new life. We can do that if we remember that we never go alone. We too have a company of friends, even if some of them fall asleep at inopportune times. Jesus sleeps in this morning's gospel. His friends sleep in the Garden of Gethsemane. Sometimes we sleep out of exhaustion. Sometimes we sleep in confidence. Old donation has a very long history. Times of fear, times of both kinds of sleeping, times when new life has been discovered. You are still finding new life here, and you're still spreading it into the community around you. I would pray, however, that you choose dunking in the cause of new life. Or the kind of drenching that comes from braving storms at sea, rather than throwing neighbors in the drink to see if they drown. Make new and lively Christians here. Help them discover what God has already given them. And then go together, just as you are, to damp down the fear that each one of us continually finds. God is with us. We never go alone. The storm does not last forever, and there will be peace at the last.